We're going to see who can also play any Spanish words, and Spain has now won the World Cup. At an exciting final, but it was definitely a dominant experience, and we've got these two dominating players. So we'll see if either one of them can, take a significant commanding edge in this game, the way the Team Spain did in the World Cup final. But it's Joel playing first, and let's see what he's pulled out of the bag. It starts with T, P, C, I, J. Looking a little constant heavy here. Another D here. And the seventh tile is a O. Okay, so he's going to have some choices here. Rob, what do you think Joel's going to think about here first?
Yeah, I think especially, you get a power tile on your opening rack, you're immediately starting to think, can I get this onto that double letter score and score a good 40 points to start off with? It doesn't look as though he's got those particular options here. So now one thing that might come into play here is that C being such a defensive tile when it comes to overlaps. It's possible here with the C and the O that Joel may attempt to come up with some kind of J setup that's really a bit more challenging to block with the obstruction of the C. Something where you place an O beneath one of the double letter scores and make it a lot more difficult for Wellington to obstruct it.
That's right. And, it is an interesting thing when you're looking at your opening turn and maybe holding back a big tile like the J. He's considering picot, which kind of puts the C in the middle of the word, which makes it a little harder to do, direct overlap over many tiles. But it does also put an O in the vowel position. So he's actually setting up his J. So do you think that will seem obvious to Wellington that that's a setup? Or what do you think his read is?
No, I would say this is one of the situations where you can kind of camouflage the attempt to maximize your J that he's holding in hand, because he's maximized the score for picot, and it's an eminently reasonable play. There aren't really any dramatic advantages to playing its anagram optic for the same kind of score, and it even has extensions like optician that to a player trying to sniff out these types of setups, there's not really any red flags that immediately jump to mind here. So we'll just have to see what comes out of the bag and what Wellington comes up with here. He's quickly making his play here of Eve.
Yeah, this is a really interesting play. And one of the things that works in Joel's favor is the fact that, the first turn of the game, even if your opponent thinks that you're doing some kind of setup, you might not have the tiles to do anything much about it. And in this case, Wellington did not have great tiles, but he did make a good play to undouble or untriple, in this case, his E's and undouble his A's and improve his leave himself with a good thing after Eve. But unfortunately, he's not drawn anything good to go along with it. And now it's up to Joel to see how he can score well and capitalize on the fact that he has J and now an X.
Yeah, he was potentially looking to get some good points with his J, but the tile gods have given him another gift in that X, and it plays for a lot of points here alongside of Wellington's last play. And this also, now that I look at it, it's a little bit more difficult to set up additional overlaps here himself.
That's right. Wellington is quick to respond with his play of Chi. It's clearly the most optimal Q dump. It gives him some reasonably strong tiles, and with the T and C floating out there, there's a good chance that Wellington could draw into a bingo after this. So I think this was a straightforward play for Wellington. It was a lot less straightforward for Joel about what to do next.
Yeah, the excuse me. The tile bag giveth and tile bag taketh away, giving Joel 3 T's on his play here. And also the way this board has shaken out, it's a bit of a little tease here in that Joel can make a strong play retaining all of those T's.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So he has a play hooking the D onto Picketed with an ordinary common four-letter word, but would you do it knowing that you're keeping all these T's? And what would be your alternative options?
Yeah, you do have some additional options here. You could potentially play Jot alongside of Lax, shedding one of those T's and creating a bit of an overlap that you are already in position to take advantage of, holding an O back as well. And it looks like that's what Joel has decided. I don't know. I didn't really notice whether or not he arranged Dojo on his rack at all. But that 3T leave that's a challenge. So I think it's perfectly reasonable to kind of disregard or discard Dojo as a candidate play despite the additional 12 points.
Yeah, both players making pretty quick decisions as well. So they seem to be pretty confident about these being the right moves. But at this point, with a strong rack with the Z to score with, but no playable bingos, what does Wellington need to do?
Wellington needs to decide how aggressively does he want to play this, and how much strength does he think Joel has on his rack after a play like Jot. You can see at one point he was looking at Izar and potentially is still looking at it. That plays alongside of Joel's last play of Jot, but it floats an I in a really useful spot when it comes to making 8-letter words. So the question here, does Wellington want to play alongside of Jot? Does he want to burn his S to play the same word or to play its plural down, making seat, which gets rid of some of his scoring potential next turn, but is a lot less volatile, takes a smaller risk than what he's laying on the board now with Izar.
Yeah, this is really interesting and impressive because there's so many different words that can even be formed. So to even identify the plays that are available takes some time. And the fact that Wellington was able to quickly determine that Izar is his optimal play, I think that's really goes to show just what skill he has. He looked at Izar briefly as kind of maybe hooking onto Eat to make seat and scoring over there. That would have been a sort of mid-range option where you give up, the powerful S tile and then score just a tiny bit more. It comes with a different types of risks where the I floating in space might be powerful letter, can even be useful for triples. But really is going to matter here is now what happens with that Z and what happens with that JA. Unfortunately for Joel, he doesn't have a letter that goes next to JA. So what does he actually do? Does he approach this as a threat that needs to be kind of dealt with, or does he just look at playing somewhere else and just balancing his rack?
I imagine he might be getting into the Spanish spirit here after the World Cup final. He has a playable bingo on his rack if he can generate it.
Ooh, and that's a rack where it's not obvious that it would have a bingo in it, but you do have to time to take a look because it's sort of mid-range level where there's obviously possibilities of having a bingo. There is a vowel, consonant, balance. He's alphagrammed his tiles. I don't know do we know if Joel is somebody who would have lined up his bingo? And clearly the bingo's a cut above the next best play by far. So if he finds it, he would probably lay it down right away, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, I imagine so. I don't know that there's really any really strong plays that obstruct the threat of that triple that come from Izar. So assuming that he generates his play, I don't know whether he would have a good kind of justification to pass it up. As far as I can tell, let me see here. I have no wonder I was wondering why Quackle was giving me such strange options. It's because I missed a play. Give me one moment.
Well, that's okay. While you figure that out. So the play that we're looking at is a 7 with a T, starting with T. It's Tostado, and he can play that in just one spot, forming pit, and it will definitely leave potent options in the top right corner for plays. But once if he realizes that, he's going to just have to take that risk that he might get hit over there and play his bingo. But it doesn't seem as though Joel has recognized that, although it's very difficult to tell. But the high probability rack at Alpha Grand, it's possible that Joel saw it immediately and just is now looking at it through all the other possibilities. So no way to really know that for sure. But he is Joel Wapnik after all, so you give him the benefit of the doubt here. It's also a rack where because of those O's, you might not necessarily think of the word unless it's like specifically pops out at you, like toast coming out of the toaster. But this is tostado, and he's going to go with zoot, which bounces the rack, takes away the dangerous spot, and it's going to be interesting afterward to find out if there's any possibility that he actually saw his bingo and chose not to play it.
Yeah, I think there may be the possibility that I don't remember for sure, but I feel like tostado might be a slightly newer word, slightly added in one of the more recent dictionary updates. So it's possible that Joel just might not have had that automatic recognition of the rack that he would for other high probability plays.
Oh, that's a very interesting point. And it works well for Wellington, who didn't necessarily have, a significantly important play in that overlapped position, although he had a few letters that would fit there. But he can definitely benefit from that T, and he bingos right away with Triegs. And it's back to Joel, who now has some tiles that he can use. But what does he do here?
And it's already spelled out in the chat. I guess Joel must be getting hungry here. He has another, in this case, Mexican food option available to him through the O in picote, or picot. I'm not actually sure how to pronounce that.
Right. In both cases, there's an O and a T in two places to play Triegs. And then now that Wellington took the one in the triple line on the right side, it leaves the O open in picote. So in this bingo that we're going to see from Joel, most likely would have gone down in either case, no matter which one Wellington had chosen. Although it seems clear that choosing the one on the right side, more defensive, takes out a triple line, doesn't really open other lines, and was the more defensive option. So this will mean that if Joel plays his bingo now, that it creates all sorts of lines that will benefit Wellington.
Yeah, the difference between those two plays that were available to Wellington, he took a 3-point sacrifice to block the triple line that was available after Zoot. And like you said, Triegs creates a lot less opportunity for Joel to play through and score 8-letter bingos onto the board. So he's kind of now put himself in a position where Joel, when he finds and plays gorditas, most likely, sorry to spoil it, but I know it's already hit the chat a couple of times. What is Joel doing here?
This is actually really interesting. In terms of valuation, his choice to play dog is really not that far behind Gorditas. It's a huge point sacrifice, but it actually probably is going to work out better because if Wellington had the free reins, he could have bingoed in that triple line up there. Now he's going to have to take a smaller bingo, and he's found alveoli as one of the options. So this is really interesting, but it could backfire on Joel if he's not able to answer with his own bingo after all.
Yeah, like you said, that was a lot of points, and it also Joel used a D and a G, but something like an M coming down for jam or even the K. That was a really volatile hotspot there, And stare generally is such a strong bingo leave that, I can easily see the case that, this wasn't a miss. That was a choice, that Joel is comfortable on the board as it is with less really easy, cheap, low-hanging fruit for Wellington to pick for a bunch of points and just respond to whatever it is that Wellington chooses to do here.
Yeah. And so alveoli does come down. So you can breathe in and breathe out. Deal with your stress. Those alveoli are, of course, in your lungs. And you're looking at a game where Wellington has now got 2 bingos down, and the score is starting to get a little bit of separation, and it's going to get tougher on Joel. He has letters that are close to a bingo, but does he have anything that he can play?
Yeah, and we're seeing that kind of just instinctive board constriction that Wellington is so good at. His positioning here with this choice of alveoli, he could have played hooking alongside of Triegs for the same score, but a much more volatile and dangerous opening, which Wellington has no desire to do when he's taking a bingo lead. So looking at what this placement of alveoli does, it not only blocks many of the floaters for bingoing with 8s, it also takes away some of the other scoring opportunities on the board. Looking at Joel's rack here, where he drew a U to his stared leave, he potentially might have been looking to play something like Quare to get rid of the U and his duplicated R for some points, still leaving RST as a really strong leave. And now that's been taken away. So Joel is starting to run out of really potentially high scoring options to keep this board open so that he can hit a bingo onto his hopefully strong leaves.
Yeah, I mean, it's still early and there's lots of territory, but Rob, as I'm trying to think through some of the options for Joel, there is a 6-letter play in the top center of the board available of Aurist, Aurist. That's 35 points. He also has the middle center triple word at the bottom, where he could play Orari, which would open the board wide. So, and of course you could play short and just play a couple of tiles and essentially fish for bingos. What's the approach that he has to take at this point? Is he, so far behind that he should be starting to focus on fishing for a bingo, or should he be trying to score points while he opens the board up?
Yeah, I think with this deficit, the shape of this board, the scoring plays available to him, I think this is what I ultimately might play as well, looking at Orari to force open this board. You said at one point just now, talking about how it's still pretty early in the game, and I just know that I've thought that it was still pretty early in a game against Wellington before, and then suddenly I had no options available to me. And I think Joel will have that kind of respect and kind of understanding of Wellington's strengths as a defensive player, to not fall into a trap where Forrest, coming down from the top of the board, scores 14 more, and you think to yourself, there's still a line here alongside Triegs, but there's really only 2 areas of the board that are viable bingo pathways after Orist. That's still the case here to some extent, but it becomes more difficult to really complicate things after Orari compared to Orist. It's close. I don't think that either one is necessarily an absolute slam dunk, but I think the fact that Joel potentially can get some scoring plays down without using an S to hook onto EAT might have swung the decision here for him.
I see, yeah. And when after Orari, lots of lanes are open, but Wellington is taking some points with a yeah. Meanwhile, slowly but surely, it's like if you don't hit your bingo very quickly, the board starts to shrink and shrink as space, gets taken away from little plays. So it really comes down to, I think, Joel being able to balance his rack and score here, and hopefully, for him, get a bingo down in probably the following turn. Because if not, it might be the case where the board starts to really get small.
Yeah, I mean, you can very easily make the case that Orist would have set him up a little bit better compared to Orari, but it looks as though he has the possibility now to throw that S out into space where he needs it to create volatility to keep fighting in this game. Yeah, that the play that Wellington made does have some drawbacks, some defensive liabilities. There's still a bingo line available. There's still scoring available there. But the thing about Wellington as a defensive player is that he's not limiting himself to only thinking about the next turn. He's looking at a play like and thinking, what'll this look like 2 turns from now, 3 turns from now? And he's so good at comprehending how the shape of the board will look like in the future, because plays coming down from to score some points even automatically start to get in the way of some of the plays that might go through the R and the A in Orari.
Yeah, but Joel at this point, if he sees it, has a very strong play, a 40-point play to the top center triple of Snift, S-N-I-F-T, which scores 40 points, creates an S lane, uses one T but not both, because there are a few T's and there's lots of ends to potentially draw. So that seems far and away like his top play. There might be a couple other options to choose from, but to me, if he's able to spot that, he's going to do well for himself.
Yeah, there is one play available that I find really kind of intriguing, which would play through the I and L on the board, hooking an N onto key. Finlit gives a pretty cleaned up rack, still relatively tough with the 3 consonant leave, but 30 points retaining the S is always an appealing option. But that's a really tough spot to see.
Yeah, it would take a lot of vision, and then of course the word knowledge of Finlit. That is something else altogether. He chooses Tift, which is an interesting option. It scores a bit and keeps some letters open. Definitely, he's trying to do things, but as I said, now with these stacking plays, Wellington is making this board get a little bit smaller, inch by inch, taking rows away. And now that bottom right quadrant is not looking very promising for bingos for sure.
Yeah, it's what looked like a really helpful board opening play of Orari 2 turns ago. Suddenly now it looks a lot harder to start a bingo with the R or the A. You still have the I, of course, and you can end in those letters or use them later in words, but Wellington is just kind of slowly turning the screws on the board shape and just scoring tons of points while starting to eliminate just the breadth of options available to Joel. And I just said now that he was slowly turning the screws, but that's not even true. He's also starting to apply some time pressure onto Joel. Joel is already under 9 minutes left on his clock, and he's still struggling to get that bingo off of his rack.
Yeah, it goes to show that the window to actually land the bingo when you're, trying to balance your rack and get to the bingo can really become really brief and narrow, because in this case, not only is the space being taken away, it's getting harder to bingo, but in that time, Wellington has been able to get some points and also now, gotten to the next blank before he did. So, even after all is said and done, it may be the case that Wellington bingos first.
Yeah, for sure. And as it's been noted in the chat, Yurta, besides scoring 39 points, also conveniently blocked the bingo that Joel had drawn through that A. He had Madison's to get himself right back into contention in the game, and now he's potentially looking at a fish. Maybe he plays off one of his S's for about 20 points, but just the options that looked so plentiful last turn, 2 turns ago, are already starting to dissipate.
Oh, yes. And with the two S's, it does seem like that might be a way to go. It's a bit of a fish. It's kind of counting on, a good draw the following turn, but there's lots of E's to draw. And there might be a few other letters that will bingo if he jumps an S. I do think that with the deficit starting to get pretty significant, that might be a good option to consider because we also don't want to run through so many tiles and get to the end of the game so fast. And that is a big factor now because the margin is getting greater for him to come back.
Yeah, this is a tough one. It looks like Joel at one point was looking at the possibility of playing Odism, hooking the S onto Yurta for a pretty strong score. It scores 30 points or so, but again, that's just further complicating the geometry of the board down towards the bottom 5 rows. And especially now, not that Joel is able to know this, but from the booth here, with our knowledge of Wellington having drawn a blank, the second blank, things are looking pretty grim for Joel, and I don't know if he has a really good way to escape it.
Yes, it does appear a bit grim because of what we know. That being said, one of the things that is challenging, in general, like is being able to deal with playing from behind. Your opponent has that advantage. There is always that pressure to on the leader to make sure that the board isn't open and not give away anything for free. But the odds are that if Joel plays a longer play, getting good stuff is hard to do, especially when there's some stopper tiles in there that could really muck it up, like W's and K's and F's unseen. One of them could be all it takes to take his bingo odds down. Now he's giving up some significantly high scoring tiles, and he's played Misdo instead of Odism, scoring a little less. Maybe he's trying to see if he can also leave a high-scoring play option in the corner because he's not necessarily going to be in a place where he can score instantly. But this is going to be interesting to see what he's able to recover from after this third bingo from Wellington.
Yeah. What do we have here? What's on that blank cam? This is not quite coming to me. Federale. I'm not sure that that's a valid play.
It appears not.
There were some plays through that A, like D fleed and B fleed. But doesn't look as though Joel held the play at all, which could be an additional factor of the time pressure that he's now under.
That's fascinating. These two big time players, perhaps a little confusion and with this bingo rack. Wellington plays a word that's not valid, and Joel doesn't notice. And this game is now, if he had noticed and blocked it or blocked the lane and did something else, then there might have been an outside chance that Joel works his way back in. But that could be, a critical mistake for Joel to miss that one. He does score well with you now, though.
Yeah, it would have been a bit more of a challenge for Wellington to find. He had a bingo available up to the T in Tift, Deep Felt, which is a deeper dive into the book to come up with. had Joel blocked bingos through the A. But what's really frustrating from Joel's perspective in a situation like that is even if you challenge off the phony bingo and know your opponent's rack, you try to block their bingos, you're also blocking off what you need if you're going to have any chance to win yourself.
That's right. And so what happens now? I mean, Wellington's got a commanding lead. He's got some tricky letters. Does he have some ways to score well now?
Oh, he sure does. His Drecky letters, as we've seen even in the last game, just always seem to work with what's available to him. He's got some pretty straightforward plays through the O in Miss Do if he were to choose to take them. Things like no for 48 points. But he also, as he had set up on his rack, he had could hooking underneath E now for 54 points. Just no matter how badly he draws, he's just a magician finding just maximalized points on this board.
Yeah, what a timing to have those heavy letters where you've got actually a embarrassment of riches with them, with both corners in play. And now, finally, there's, bingo letters, sitting on Joel's rack, but, he doesn't have any bingos to play because there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah, this is just, it's always so tough. And I think I might have alluded to this a bit during one of the games yesterday, where just observing and experiencing the type of defense that Wellington is able to play. And it's actually a skill set that a lot of really strong Nigerian players that I've encountered come up with. Is just such an instinctive flowing defense and constriction of the board, and just recognizing what the board is going to look like in the next, like 2 turns from now, depending on what the game situation demands of their opponent. Like, they'll know what you need to try to open up, and they're preparing for it. And it forces kind of an evolution for me as personally as a player. How do I counter that? How do I adjust my own instinctive, defensive play to account for that? And learning to kind of play your opponents, or learning what your opponent's tendencies and strengths are, is one of the really critical aspects of tournament Scrabble as you get higher and higher up in the ratings.
Yeah, and we're kind of seeing Wellington in top form. Yeah, he's drawing fairly well, and that is evidenced by the 2 blank bingos, even though he did play a phony here. But it's just that ability to control the board and consistently pick up points and sort of put the asphyxiation on his opponents who run out of room to do anything. And then, as they fall into their frustration, really cannot mount much of a comeback. So this could be a very good sign for Wellington going forward in this tournament as we get into the next couple of days, because he's not just winning, but he's winning soundly, and he's making his opponents feel like they're in an uphill climb most of the way.
Oh, for sure. There's always going to be that randomness element of luck and what you draw, and even more importantly, when you draw it in Scrabble. But at least from the games that we've had the privilege to observe of Wellington, his strategic thinking is so on point so far this weekend that sure, there will be games that just no one can win, and sometimes you'll have a really closely contested game that doesn't go your way. But by and large, he is in excellent playing shape, as he's shown us this afternoon in this game and the previous one.
Yeah, now he's sitting with a 6-consonant rack. He's looking at the option of playing SNIB, forming ST on your tuss, and scoring a few points at the same time. It would allow him to hold on to his E. There's, fewer vowels. It's not a big discrepancy between vowels and consonants I'm seeing, but that might be something he's considering. The only real place where a comeback can be mounted of any kind is in the top left quadrant, where there's an opportunity to play some bingos there potentially. So is he going to look to try to do something about the top left quadrant, or does he just keep taking points wherever he can find them and just sort of cruise to victory?
Yeah, that's a really good point and a good question. Because like you said, the most reasonable bingo line is most likely to that T in Tift, or possibly with the unseen eyes to the C in Picot. So yeah, there is the potential here that Wellington could look to sacrifice some scoring here to just remove those possibilities. With 12 tiles left in the bag, I'll admit I'm a little bit surprised that he looks like he wants to empty the bag with his play here of binges. I'm a little bit surprised in that there was kind of a game situation optimal type of blocking play above of Benni, Benni, to the I in Tift, which would really complicate any possibility of a bingo coming down right now and forcing Joel to fish off one tile, empty the bag, and most likely leave a blockable bingo opportunity.
Yeah, it is always a little strange to see an intentional emptying of the bag, especially in this situation. I mean, not that the game was in doubt, so perhaps this has something to do with just wanting to get the game over with at the end of a long day of Scrabble, knowing that the outcome is already kind of determined. But nevertheless, a very unconventional move to play binges and do that, and he won't be any worse for wear on it because Joel didn't have anything after all. But Joel makes a nice play to turn it into period.
Yeah, it's one of his top plays going into this end game. I'm really interested and intrigued to find out what might be discussed after this game. Some of the choices and strategies employed. Certainly, if either or both players are feeling chatty, like the resume on display in this game would be wonderful to be able to listen to.
Yeah, I suspect we might not get as much dialogue as we would want, given that it's again at the end of the day, the margin is going to be quite significant, looking like Wellington will win by over 100. But you're right. I mean, it's absolutely true that understanding a little bit about what they were thinking in different times will be important, and some of it might have to do with setups that were unseen to us, or possible words that are uncommon. Especially when you're playing these long games and you get into the end and you know that you've got the game well in hand. Sometimes you start focusing a little bit on what would be a cute play or a fun word to play. Not that Wellington is someone who gives himself to trivialities, but different players have different thoughts about how they want to play that last few turns and how they'll approach it. So it would be good to get into their minds, but I'm not anticipating these two will end up having a long conversation unless there's some thought about discovering the fact that phony got on the board after they plug things in.
Yeah, I agree. Not getting any super clear indications of what Wellington might be contemplating here with his pretty clunky rack here. With the game being as out of hand as it is when it comes to who wins and who loses, I'm interested to see what he decides to kind of get through. Does he look to find a place to get rid of as many of his scoring tiles as he can, knowing that Joel is certainly going out next turn? Does he look instinctively to get rid of the W and the M? Does he try to maximize his score? Does he do both? I think he may have just spotted what looks to be one of his best plays right now of women. It's a score 18.
Yep, he's seen it, and the thing is that he doesn't have a floating in space for Mbao or and Woom as he did play Mbao in an earlier game. And he does find this nice play, especially hard to see through that blank E. So kudos to Wellington for seeing that, because that's to have that sharp eye even at this late stage at the end of a long day of intense Scrabble. Wow, I got a good credit to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it looks like, I imagine Joel, well, I don't know. We'll see how diligent is Joel feeling right now. Does he want to try to maximize his spread here? It looks like his best option is simply to go out. He has a 19-point play available to him if he sees it.
Yeah, and he only has 30 seconds remaining on his clock, so I expect it's going to come down quite readily. Oh, he's going to play it somewhere else. Maybe he's not 100% sure if Ya takes the S, which it does, but he's going to play I's and Pia's. I, of course, being the sloth, or not artificial intelligence for those watching up there. But that's your game. And, well, it was another crushing win for Wellington.